Hello, this is Jack Jackson. This is going to be an introduction to Graphmatica. Graphmatica is a shareware program that from Ksoft, and it is a graphing utility that's a really good utility. I've used it for many years now. We have a site license to it here at UA Fort Smith. But go to www.graphmatica.com and it goes to this site here, and we can go right here and download the if you have a Windows machine, download right here, or a Mac here. So it does run on Macintosh or Windows. So I have a Windows machine, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to save that file, and then I'm going to double click on my download file and run this to install it. And actually, Graphmatica can run from a flash drive. So if you put this on a flash drive, you can easily run it, even really without installing it. Let's see here. So I'm going to open the folder that contains this, and we're going to run the Graphmatica. Get this installed. So I'm just going to take you through the whole process here of installing it and get started with running some graphs. So pretty simple install here. It's a very small program. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Used to run it from a floppy drive. It was small enough for that back in the old days. Okay, so let's see if that shows up here as a program. Graphmatica, and pull that up, and this is what it should look like. Now yours may look a little different than this when you pull it up. I've got it installed before, and I've reinstalled a new version, so mine has some setting files. So let me show you a couple things just to make it look a little better. I think this basic kind of setup with the white background and the grid here makes it a little bit easier to see, but let me show you some things you can do. Options, graph paper. There are rectangular, trig, polar, logarithmic paper. You can do no grid lines at all, like this, for example. We can do dots for our grid, and it's just a matter of personal preference and your needs. You could do dotted grid lines like that, and I personally just like the solid grid. Okay, and it will draw the axes, draw arrows on the axes, and I'm going to make those settings there the same. I'd rather that be natural logarithm. Legends, automatic spacing, that's all fine. Centered on the grid lines is good. Labels, I can type in. You can type in some labels, titles on your graphs, labels at the left and right and the bottom sides. If you want, you can turn on X and Y labels for the axes, or you can label them in a particular application. You could label them whatever they might be, like time and velocity or something like that. And so that will show up if you want to do that. We can control the colors of everything. So basically, I want a white background. I think that's a lot better. One thing for printing and for pasting into documents, I think it looks better that way myself. I just put a black border around it. I'll put my axes in a different color than the grid lines, and I choose grid black because when I'm printing this out, it looks better. And for some reason I didn't get back to my solid grid, so let me go back and fix that in a minute. And then so forth, and then basically I make sure these graphs rotate around different colors. But if you need, for some reason, you want several of them to be the same color, you can do that as well. Okay, so you got several colors to choose from. You can choose fonts, and for all the different types of labels, you can control the fonts. So basically, you can control a lot of things about the way things look. I do have solid grid lines, so this is how I want it to look right here. Okay, let's look at some other options. Some settings. You can control the thickness of the graphing lines by this. I'm using 4 pixels there. You can do it dotted instead, and so forth. You got some controls here, some controls on your tables, and so forth. So we're going to leave that alone for now, and now we have this here. So let's just go ahead and start using this a little bit. So in this box right here is where you type the equation. So a little bit different than the graphing calculator, but almost the same. You type in the equation, but you have to type the y equals. You have to type it as an equation. So y equals 3x, for example. It goes just like that. And you want to use x for, x and y, x for horizontal, y for vertical variable, the standard letters. But what's also kind of interesting about this one that maybe is a little different than your calculator, you can graph, y equals 4, get a horizontal line, but you can also graph x equals, say, 2.5 to graph a vertical line. You can also graph things like 2x plus 4y equals 7. So there's another line. So far everything's a line, but this one you didn't have to solve for x or y first. I can graph y equals x squared, use the little caret, just like it looks on the calculator, like that, for y equals x squared. But I can also do x equals y squared. Or I could even do x squared plus y squared equals 16. And notice that one, oops, missed a letter there, number there. There we go. And notice that one is a circle. It's not even a function at all. Y is not a function of x. X is not a function of y. So we have graphs so that they don't have to be solved for x or solved for y. They don't have to even be functions. Now we have our full list of functions or relations, not necessarily just functions, but that are graphed here. By pulling this down, we can click on a certain one, or we can click on a certain one here, like say this horizontal line. If I click on it, its formula comes up. I can click on hide graph right here, and that will go away, but it's still in our list, and so we can go back and get it and say graph it. But I can also click on that now, for example, and hit X, and it's deleted. It's no longer in our list. So if we want it back, we have to plot it. I can hit this one here, which I believe it's this one, which will clear the whole screen. Again, the relations are still in our list. So, for example, if we want our circle back, we can look at that. So very, very easy to use. Okay, so let's look at a couple other basic things. We'll put up an easy one here. Y equals 2x plus 1. And we see the graph. If you click on this icon right here, I believe it is, point tables, it gives us our point tables here, and right now they're the same as the lines on the grid spacing. Okay, I can go to options, and if you remember under settings, I believe it was settings, yeah, point tables gave me some things that I could control. So for example, I can go custom increment and lock it to size 1, and I can control how many decimal places are in the output if it goes longer. Okay, and now I have the table, and I can scroll up and down, and it actually goes from the left end of the screen to the right end of the screen, the way the screen is set up. I can box in a certain area like this and hit the zoom in button, and it will zoom in on that particular part. Notice that I still told it to go up by 1, so it readjusted the point table for me there as well. I can turn that off, and so I have tables and graphs. Let's graph another one. Y equals x squared. How about y equals 5 minus x squared? Okay, maybe that's not the greatest thing, so we can zoom out. Maybe okay, that's actually a pretty good window. We could leave it at that, but we can also go to View and go to Grid Range or Control R, and this is the same thing as a window on the calculator. So we can do a couple of things. We can just type this in, like say we want to go from -3 to well, let's say maybe not -3, maybe -4 to 4 on the x, and maybe -8 to 7 on the y, and now it'll regraph that part of it. If I go back to grid range here and I leave one of the numbers out, like leave out that one, now, and it's going, and I check this box here, it's going to go ahead and set this as the left and right things. This is like x min and x max on your calculator, and the bottom is like y min on your calculator, but the top is left open so that it will automatically adjust that so that we have a square scale. We can also scroll without changing the sort of the aspect ratio. We can scroll left and right and up and down with these scroll bars, which is also, of course, adjusting our grid range. So that wasn't a really great idea to do in this particular time. So let me go back. Maybe look at that example. As I notice, as I rearrange the aspect ratio in the box, it kind of the window, it kind of adjusts the graph, accordingly. So if you want a graph that's, the overall window is more square, you can do that. This is more the shape of my screen, so I'm just going to go with that. Let's go ahead and maximize it. Okay, what are some other things we can do? Well, let's see here. We can go to Tools and find the intersection of two curves. We just tell it to two curves, which are these two, and say calculate, and notice it calculates at least approximate values for this point here, which is -3.2361, comma, -5.4721, at least to that many decimal places, and then one here. Okay, it will find all of them that fit in the screen. If you think there's an intersection point off screen, and you can get an estimate of it by seeding it with a possible x value. But notice to find the ones on the screen, you really didn't have to do much. All you had to do was, again, go to Tools, Intersection, identify your two curves, calculate, and boom, it finds all of the intersection points on the screen, which is nicer than the calculator, because the calculators you have to do each intersection point one at a time. This finds all of them. Let me do a cubic here. Y equals, how about x plus 2, x minus 3, and x plus, how about minus 1. Okay, so here we have a graph of a cubic. I can go to Calculus menu and say find critical points, and notice that it looked everywhere on the screen it found a 0, so the 0 is the x coordinate there. Now notice this is not perfect, because the actual x0 is actually at -2, so this is rounded off a little bit, and there's actually a 0 at 1 and at 3, and they missed actually by just a little bit. Okay, and then we could have a maximum or a minimum. We end up having a maximum here. That's the -7 point whatever, and the y is this, and this x of 2 point something, and this is a y as a minimum. Okay, so it will find some things there. You can draw everything. There's everything drawn in. We can erase everything. Okay, here's a button for copying the graphs, and we can print it. Now if we print this will print to one page. It'll have basically this graph will be at the top of the page, and below that will be a list of the equations that are on the screen that are being graphed. You can, if you choose, I think one of our options earlier was to print point tables, and if that's turned on, when you print out, it'll print point tables. But what I find I do more than print from Graphmatica is this. I'll go here and go to Edit and say Copy, and I use this Enhanced Meta file and usually use it in color. So once I've copied that, I can go to some other document like a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word and just do Paste, and now this is in Microsoft Word as a graphic. So it's a really easy way to get some really nice graphics, which now I can resize according to my document here, and gives you a really nice looking little quick easy way to get graphics for Cartesian graphs. So this is the program I usually use when I'm trying to generate graphs for my notes in PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, or then I make PDFs of them from Word. Okay, let's see what else. You can save a file. If you save it, it saves this as a Graphmatica file, so that when you open it again, it'll open in Graphmatica and has all of the information. I'm going to save the setup information so that that will be there the next time I open it up. We can do a scatter plot by going here if I want to plot a particular point. I suppose I want to plot the roots to, negative 2 and 0, and then say 1, 0, and 3, 0. Those are my x-intercepts. Y-intercept was 0, 6. And we also had a maximum minimum there. I forgot now what they were, but they have those there. And I can control the color of these dots. So that one would be blue, for example. I can change the shape. Okay. And there are some curve fitting possibilities there we'll talk about a little bit later on. And let's see, you can add annotations and type in and place that here, so you can add text to it if you want. Also, under options, if you remember a while ago, we had, I think it was under graph paper, go to legends, to labels, and you can add labels various places on here. See if there's anything major I'm missing. There is sort of a trace that's a coordinate cursor. Where was that? Here. And if you notice down here at the lower left hand, it's telling me where I am right now, and it will turn green when it says it's on that equation. On that graph that goes with that equation. And so I can kind of trace along here. So it's a type of a trace. Oh, if you want to restrict the domain here, suppose I want to take this, but I only want it to be defined, say, between x going from, say, from 2 to 3. So what I can do is I can put a braces x colon 2 comma 3 brace, and now it's only going to graph that between 2 and 3, which is this part of the graph right here. If you look, it's a different color because it's on top of the other one. So if I clear everything out and I only graph that part there, you only see that part that was needed there. So you can restrict that by restricting which y's are there or which x's are there. Okay, there's several other things that can be done with this. It's got a lot of more powerful features built in, but those are the basics, and will get you going, get you a nice looking graph of your function here, or just relations that aren't functions. So I highly recommend that you download Graphmatica and use it this semester. It's a really good tool. I'm happy that they now have it for Mac as well as a PC. And there are other graphing programs out there that are also very, very good, but this one I think is one of the easiest to use. In fact, probably even easier to use than the calculator. And does really good quality graphs with nice use of color, and they can copy and paste into other places such as Microsoft Word very easily. So again, an introduction to Graphmatica.